You've decided to make singing your vocation. Now what? You may be struggling to balance your life and a career in music. Are you curious about how other singers make it or how they've dealt with success and failure? Do you wonder what their biggest challenges have been, or how about what they've learned on their journey and what's important to them today? Hi, I'm Valerie Day, a singer, educator, and creative explorer. You might know me from my work with the Grammy-nominated band New Shoes. Welcome to Living a Vocal Life, where I interview singers who have succeeded in creating a life in music. You'll hear from vocalists of all genres in different stages of their careers, including singers who've been on the Billboard charts and those who are teaching the next generation. What do they have in common? They're all performers with amazing stories to tell and experiences to share. In our conversations, you'll learn what inspired them to become a singer, the kinds of challenges they've encountered, and how they've overcome them. I'll also share what I've learned on my own journey as a singer and educator, practical tools and insights that will help you to live your best, most authentic vocal life. Hello and welcome to Living a Vocal Life. Thanks so much for listening. Before I introduce my guest, I'd like to invite you to sign up for my newsletter. Vocal Notes will land in your inbox just once or twice a month. In it, you'll find practical tips and inspiration for singers and a link to the latest podcast interview so you'll never miss an episode. Subscribers also receive special discounts when they purchase my courses for singers. You can find the link to my website in the show notes or just head to ValerieDaySings.com. I look forward to connecting with you.
Hosting in a fair for one, quite aware there's none but me. Biding time, pressing rewind, stressing to climb through mind's debris. Up, down, high, low, cyclical flow exposes things. Lift the covers to uncover a truth. See what monotony is brought to you.
Josh Breckenridge is known as a triple threat, a singer, dancer, and actor, and he excels at all three. He's best known for his standout roles on Broadway and appearances on hit TV shows The Blacklist, Bluebloods, and FBI. Currently, he's a part of the Apple Original Films live filming of the award-winning Broadway hit Come From Away, and will rejoin the cast when it returns to Broadway this September. Jay was living and working in New York City when the pandemic hit. As the shutdown stretched from days to weeks to months, he found himself alone in his apartment with restless creative energy and a lot on his mind. He picked up his ukulele and a writing pad and began to compose some songs. His passionate originals, expressive arrangements, emotional delivery, and fresh yet familiar melodies call to mind influences as wide-ranging as the classic R&B of Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye and Smokey Robinson, and the current sounds of Bruno Mars, Michael Bublé, and John Legend. In our wide-ranging conversation, you'll hear how a production of the musical Annie changed the trajectory of Jay's life, from troubled kid to focused, driven musical theater performer. You'll also hear how his time at the Cincinnati School of the Arts prepared him for the competitive life as a performer, the kinds of relationships it's essential to have in show business, and the importance of mental health for performers. After listening to this episode, believe me, you'll want to check out Jay's videos to see this triple threat in action. Just head to my website, ValerieDaySings.com/podcast for more. And now on to the episode. Hi, Jay. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Valerie.
So I'm going to start with the question that I ask everyone here on Living a Vocal Life. What's your first memory of singing? How old were you? Where were you?
I had to be probably around like 3 or 4, jumping up and down on my parents' bed in North Carolina, singing my ABCs.
Nice.
Yeah, that's where I was born. My dad was in the military, Cherry Point military base. So we lived in that area of North Carolina, and I moved out here to California, and I've been here basically ever since, save for my current life in New York City. So jumping up and down on the bed, that's probably my earliest memories. And one of the first moments where I realized I like being the center of attention.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I just have one brother, one younger brother.
So you're the oldest. And you still like being the center of attention.
I know. It's a problem. It was a problem. I was a bad kid. Like I was a get a detention every day, ADD, just troublemaker type of child. And it was interesting. Fast forward to middle school, first time that I recall seeing a musical and discovering what that was and discovering I could sing and act and dance and everything that I do now professionally as an adult was in 7th grade when I saw a production of Annie, and I said, I want to do that. I want to be an orphan in a red wig.
You could rock the red. I know you could.
No, I got bit by the bug hard then, and from there on out, completely switched around, flipped, and became a almost straight A student. No disciplinary action was needed. No more detentions or anything. I wasn't driving my parents crazy. I had focus. I had drive. I had a mission and an aim in life. And I think that it's so important for our youth to have something to focus on, whether it's that we expose them to music and instruments and singing and theatrics or sports or academics or whatever. I just think giving kids the option is so important. And I'm so blessed and grateful for my parents for giving me that option and being as supportive as they have been all the way. It's really made all the difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. You were also in Fallbrook, California, the avocado capital of the world, right?
The world. Research. I'm a California boy at heart and at my roots pretty much. And I left here upon graduating high school and went to the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, CCM is the acronym, and got my BFA in musical theater there.
And you also received the Laurie Beachman Award for Outstanding Achievement in Vocal Performance.
I did.
Yeah. Did you have a good experience in music school? What did you learn that contributed to your decision to make the leap from the Midwest to New York City?
Yeah, I did. It was a big culture shock for me. I come from this small town. I'm an African-American male. My family at the time when I was going to high school here was probably one of the few Black families. We live around the edge of a military base, Camp Pendleton. And so the only kids of color that I knew that were at my school lived on base for the most part. So growing up in a predominantly white area was interesting and was all I knew. And, but yeah, moving to Cincinnati was a culture shock for a lot of reasons. But sorry, to answer your question, I had a great time. It was a very cutthroat program. They had a system where up until your sophomore year, you could be essentially kicked out of the program for a myriad of reasons, but mostly due to, work ethics and maybe even talent. So it was very nerve-wracking to be in that program, but also very nurturing and educational and all the things I needed to propel me into my career as an actor, and specifically right when I got out of school as a Broadway actor. So yeah, it was very cutthroat, very hard and rigorous. We had about 15 classes a quarter, which was...
That's a lot.
Besides the gen ed classes, you have vocal performance and choral ensemble and every form of dance, jazz, tap, ballet, what have you, modern, your acting courses, everything that is necessary to work on, to hone those skill sets as a musical theater performer, which is singing and acting and dancing, trying to be proficient in all three areas. So their claim to fame is that people leave their triple threats for the most part.
That's what I was going to say. You're a total triple threat. Is that why you went to the college in the first place? Is that why you chose to go there?
My family moved down to San Diego when I was a sophomore in high school. We lived in Lompoc, California, which is a small town right next to another military base, strangely enough, Vandenberg Air Force Base, just a little outside of Santa Barbara area, San Luis Obispo. And I came down here to San Diego County kicking and screaming. I was a sophomore in high school.
That's a hard time of life. Yeah. Make a move, all your friends, you're leaving.
Oh my God. I was livid. And it ended up being the best move ever. I joined this youth conservatory called San Diego Junior Conservatory. And from there, I met Donna Corey, who was the regional choreographer for CCM for my college. And she was the first person to introduce me to the school and told me about it and said, you should definitely go here. And you have what it takes to go here. And I started to do my research and I was like, oh, it's number one. There's Carnegie Mellon, there's Boston Conservatory, and basically in Michigan, University of Michigan, those were like the big, at least at that time, and I think still today, were like the big MT schools. So anyways, I took her advice, I auditioned for the program, and I got in. So mostly it was the fact that they were number one, and I saw such an amazing talent base and product out there. Like all of their performers were so successful and were working. And there's also something that a lot of performing arts colleges do, which is a showcase upon graduation. You know, you're shortcutting the way into your career. You do a showcase, an hour-long showcase where everyone in your class is featured. And if your school is well-known enough, which mine was, that is, the agents and casting directors and everyone that makes the New York scene work and makes the wheels turn there, they all come to that showcase or a ton of showcases.
Yeah, to find new talent.
Exactly. And so from that, I got a reading at Playwrights Horizons, not to mention an agent and multiple auditions. And through that reading, that 2-week reading, I was able to obtain my equity card, and which is my, union card for theater actors. From there, everything just snowballed, and it was a trickle effect of success, which I'm still in right now. It's really been nonstop, just show to show to show, debuts and film and TV and now music.
What a launching pad.
Incredibly blessed. Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of people don't have that springboard, especially into New York,
right.
Which you moved to in 2007? Is that right?
Yeah. I graduated in 2007 and then I've been in New York ever since. So 14, 15 years now, whatever that is. I've been in New York or on tour or just chucking along and going from gig to gig, which is, it's really been a blessing. It's been hard to stay so far away from family. And so that's why this pandemic, in a lot of ways, as horrible as it's been, it's really been a blessing to just get so much time with them and to get the time to make this pipe dream come to fruition, this dream of making an album. And here we are because of the time that I had to get it done.
There's so many things I want to ask you. Before we get to the record, I want to kind of stick with your musical theater background a little bit. So then in 2010, you were cast as Olin Montgomery in the Scottsboro Boys. Tell us what the Scottsboro Boys is about for those people who don't know their story.
Yeah, sadly, too many people don't know their story, myself included at the time. It's a story about 9 boys that were wrongfully accused of raping 2 white women in the 1930s. They were hoboing a train, which was very common at the time, going from one town to the next for work or looking for work. And the train was stopped, was pulled over because of the hoboing. And there were 2 young white women who were prostitutes that were on the train. And in order to save themselves from being discovered as such, they pointed the finger at the black boys and said, basically, they raped us, do something about it. And as history has shown, they won that situation.
They spent over 10 years incarcerated and on trial.
Trial after trial. But yeah, the Scottsboro Boys, what made the show itself really unique is that Susan Stroman, who is a queen of the musical theater.
Amazing choreographer.
Amazing director, choreographer. Yeah, just everything. And people know her work from Crazy for You and The Producers and Contact and the Scottsboro Boys. And she and Tommy Thompson and John Kander, one half of the Kander and Ebb team, they all got together and dug this up and said, you know what Tommy always told us was that it's not enough to just tell a story. You got to make it entertaining for people to listen. The biggest form of entertainment for 100 years in our country was minstrel shows, minstrelsy, blackface, all of that tomfoolery. And basically, they decided to use that as a vehicle for the show. So basically, it's told in the style of a minstrel show. You have these 9 boys, you have these 2 inmen, Tambone Bones, you have an interlocutor who is the white overseer. And that is basically the makeup of a minstrel show. So it was perfect structurally for the show. And we got a lot of hate for that, for the choices made, not only because it was entirely a white creative team, but there's a number where we did it in blackface and we put the blackface on to take it off, to say no more. Absolutely not. And what's interesting, I don't know if you've seen Them, that new series that came out this year.
No, I haven't.
There's a scene, I won't give away for people who haven't seen it, but there's a lot of minstrelsy in the show. And there's a moment where the face is wiped off, and it gave me chills. It brought me right back to the Scotchboro Boys. And even that moment in rehearsals when we first were putting on the makeup, a lot of us were expecting, it to be intense, but nowhere near the emotional roller coaster ride that it was. So it was just a very delicate process. Stro told us from the beginning, I cannot tell you what it's like to be a black male, but I can tell you what it's like to be a woman. And this is a story about underdogs, about people that come up from oppression. And really, if you look back, and for all the musical theater fans out there, Kander and Ed are historically all about the underdog. All their stories have to do with underdogs. And funny enough, a lot of their shows are huge flops when they come out. They're revived, and then they're like deemed
big hits.
And I think that's...
Why do you think that is? Is that because they're ahead of their time?
Exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. They're always ahead of the time. They always choose subject matter that is partially dark and makes you think and is poignant and thought-provoking, all those things, while being entertaining, while giving us melodies that are just timeless and incredible and
beautiful. Yeah. I watched some of the video from the show, and it's just so well done on every level. I read also that the first day of the first rehearsal of the first workshop of the show was on the Wednesday after Obama was elected.
Yes, ma'am.
What did that feel like?
It was a bone-chilling morning, that rehearsal. It really was. Just all of us were just goosebumps ridden and just in tears. And we knew the responsibility that we had to tell this story and the era and time that we were living in.
In the very beginning, you were picketed, right? That must have been rough.
It was rough. A lot of the flack that we got, a lot of the disapproval was from like some, leading Black organizations that basically thought we are a bunch of young 20-something performers that are trying to get Broadway debuts and me, and working for us and not thinking about our people and how much of a disgrace we are being, and, to our people, to our history. Our producers, everyone involved, tried just endlessly to give these folks and others that were led astray and, had thoughts about the show that were incorrect. We tried our best to give them tickets to say, hey, actually come and see it. We're actually doing the complete opposite of what you're saying, but they refused. Most people, I think like 99% of the people that were asked or were given comp tickets to have their eyes open said, no, I refuse, I won't. And I think it was mostly the blackface. Our marketing team was fantastic and we had great marketing, but it was confusing. It was, this dark subject matter and this entertaining minstrel vibe. The fact that we were getting all this buzz, it caused people to want to come and see what all the fuss was about and how dark the show really was and, what we were doing. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough. And we played for, from October 31st to December 12th. And so it was really short-lived. Our producers just pulled the plug early because they were afraid of the lack of ticket sales. And we all were just like devastated because the thought was we just need to get through the holiday season. The word is now getting out. All these theater people and artistic people are wanting to see this. And once they see it and spread the word, that's how things go. But, it's also producers' jobs to make the money and not lose money. And so I think they kind of like pieced out before they could really lose money. So that was unfortunate. Luckily, the show had a life after that.
It did really well in London.
It did. It was also at the Old Globe in San Diego. It was at the ACT Theater in San Francisco.
And it was nominated for 12 Tony Awards. Watching the videos and reading some of the interviews with the creative team and the cast, this was a really powerful story and it was told really well. But just like in all of life, sometimes it's just about timing and it's about place. And it's about just what people are ready for and willing to let in. And you can't control those things. And that's the hardest part of being alive and also being a performer, because you work your ass off to make these creative endeavors the best that they can be. And then you put them out in the world and you just don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen. So how did you deal with the failure of this musical? What did you do next?
We mourned and But like any actor, you got to move on. You got to pay the bills. I think I did a production of The Whipping Man at KC Rep, which was a 3-man play. At that point, I hadn't done a play, proper, straight play, since graduating college. And so that was really an honor to play this lead role and tell the story, another story of Black history during the Civil War, actually. But from there, I did Tales of the City, which is a musical version written by the Scissor Sisters. Incredible.
Armistead Maupin's books are fabulous. I've read all of them. They're great.
They're amazing. They're such great, just subway reads, quick reads. Like, you're so enveloped in the stories, and the fact that they started as a serial on the San Francisco Chronicle, I believe, and his whole evolution of his literary genius is really interesting, all the way to, I believe it was like PBS and Showtime's take on the stories with Olympia Dukakis and Laura Linney and all these greats. So when I got that show, I watched those. I had never heard of the books. Of course, I read them all and watched the series. And so that was a really interesting, also important show. I feel like I've had a lot of luck, or you could say I've been blessed to do a lot of very important pieces, historical pieces, voices and stories that need to be heard. This one in particular was Marianne Singleton's fictional story, but it had to do with her culture shock moving from a small town in Ohio to San Francisco and the people that she met in the 70s. And
what an era in San Francisco that was.
Right. And I played one half of the most famous literary same-sex couple in history. I played John Fielding opposite Wesley Taylor's Mouse. And we had a blast, and we were rock stars, and people loved the show. And it was directed by Jason Moore, who's directed Pitch Perfect films, among other stuff. And Stephen Aremus, who is the mastermind behind orchestrations and music supervision of The Book of Mormon and Avenue Q. And
so great music. Great
musicals, yeah. Just a really great team. Jeff Whitty, who wrote the book for Avenue Q. Really brilliant people. So it was a great team. It was another show that was short-lived. There was another one that I was able to be a part of from its inception, its first reading at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center in Waterford, Connecticut. I think that was 2009. So in between the Scottsboro period of the first reading and the first production, I was working on a lot of different stuff, but one of it was Tales of the City. So cut to this production in San Francisco that was deemed a huge hit, and we were ready to come to Broadway, and I was going to have a featured leading man role in a Broadway show, and then it just kind of crumbled apart. And again, like you said, it's the nature of the business, it's the luck of the draw, it's part of the package of being an actor and part of the thick skin that we develop and everything. So that was...
And part of the thick skin that you developed way back in college.
Absolutely. I teach these Broadway classroom classes. One thing that I always say to them is that I'm grateful for my education. I wish, in addition to all the schooling that I received, that I would have been thoroughly taught life skills, the reality of paying off student loans, paying your rent, the no-nos that you get in your face every single day. You know, I would say that if anything, that prep was there, but not necessarily from a monetary sense. And so that was kind of not a rude awakening for me, but I had to rough it to figure that out. Luckily, I've been employed a lot, which has been great. So I haven't had to suffer too much, but it's been, a balancing act trying to figure that out. That is, again, part of a vocal life, working as an actor and trying to put food on the table while living your dreams.
Did you ever have to get another kind of job while you were in between shows? Or
Yeah, of course. What I'm proud of and blessed for is that there's always been a show on the horizon or something that I knew that was like either weeks away or months away. And even with that, you got to make money, you got to pay the rent. I've been a waiter. I've worked at Reebok Sports Club New York. That was my first job, working in membership services. That was crazy. Just a lot of like odd end jobs. I think I worked as an assistant for a jeweler once. Just a lot of different little short-lived, quick jobs to get me through to the next gig.
That's a tricky thing because once you're in the show, you have to be in the show. Right. You're rehearsing 6 days a week and you can't just keep doing the other job while you're working. But I think it's really important for people to know that even when people are in a show and they look like they're totally successful from the outside, and they are because they're doing it, they're living the life that they want to live, But monetarily, you still have to make ends meet. You've also been in all kinds of television shows like The Blacklist on CBS, Bluebloods, NBC, the FBI, CBS. Yeah. So how did you get started in TV? Have you had an agent this whole time, the same one? And is that relationship one that you could count on to help you get this work?
DGRW was my agency when I first got out. I had them for years, probably like 7-8 years. And then one of my agents, my agent that I was the closest with, that I booked the most gigs with, that I had a strong rapport with, left the agency and went to another, and I left with them. So I've been with Henderson Hogan with that agency, which I love.
What do you love about that?
They're just on the ball. I don't feel like I'm overlooked. They're not a petite agency, but they're also not a huge entity. So you feel like you get time, you get attention, you get submitted. And so I'm grateful for that. And yeah, I think that I can definitely trust them to get my foot in the door. And then there's stuff that you have to do as an artist on your own. There's plenty of auditions that I've submitted myself for, or things that I've done on my own. You know, this music career is entirely on my own, has nothing to do with my agency. But yeah, they are what's called a legit agency. So they submit me for TV, film, and theater. They have a couple different agents, and each agent has certain accounts, certain casting folks that they work through. And, you know, I've been in the city for a while now. So luckily there's casting folks who are aware who I am and have cast me and stuff, and they'll either request that I come in for an audition, or my agents will see a breakdown and submit me. And or
for those who don't know, what's a breakdown?
Yeah, like a casting breakdown. There's a wonderful resource called Actors Access that is a very user-friendly resource for actors. Basically, they have a website. You go there, you look up what is currently auditioning. It'll tell you what's auditioning, how to submit, what time and date. If it's a big cattle call and everybody and their mom is wrapped around the street trying to make their big break, it'll tell you when that is. Or hopefully you have an agent or representation, or at least your equity card, your union card to get your foot in the door. I always tell folks that are just starting out, it's either that you need your equity card or an agent, preferably both.
And how do you get those? That's the tough part, right? My sister's an actress and a model and a singer. And I just remember in her early days, she was having a terrible time getting a Screen Actors Guild card, and you couldn't work without one. How do you get your first one? How do you get the card if you don't have a...
It really is. And it's all about getting that first break. And then once you're in, and you start to be known, and things get a little easier as far as being seen and given opportunities to book a job. Like I was saying before, I got my agent through my showcase. So that was really, huge. They have a sheet of all the actors in the showcase. They mark who they want to have meetings with. And then you get that paperwork after your showcase basically saying, oh, so-and-so and so-and-so want a meeting with you. You call them, you make the meeting, you hopefully are signed. And so that was the process for me. I know that the old school way is to get that old 8x10 headshot, staple that resume to the back and submit. And I would say that it would behoove anybody starting out there as an actor to go the referral route. Look at your own resources and friends that are actually in the business and making it, or at least have an agent, and trying to see if they'd be willing to push your info towards your agent and kind of get to the top of the pile.
Because it is all about relationships, really.
It is. It really is. Especially nowadays, you know, as much as we all have to have incredible amount of talent to be a contender out there amongst everyone that, you know, in the casting director's eye looks exactly like you and is doing the exact same thing. It's imperative that you are just a good person and nice to work with. I got the Book of Mormon job partly because I worked with someone that worked on Tales from the City, and they referred me. That was my recommendation. That was my clout. Directors love working with their people, their folks.
Mm-hmm. You see it all the time. People like Tim Burton, they have the same actors because they know how they work, and they know they can communicate, and they know they're not terrible to have on set. I always say to young singers, when you're auditioning people to be in your band or whatever, pick the people who are really talented, but also who you wouldn't mind being broken down in a car on the side of the road with.
In an 8-hour rehearsal with.
or whatever, stuck in a hotel room where there's 8 people and one bathroom. There's just all those kinds of scenarios where kindness matters and attitude matters and perception of the situation matters.
And it harkens back to my mom's advice, and I'm sure countless others: don't burn your bridges. It's too small of an industry and a planet, for that matter, to be an asshole.
Yeah. And you also don't, you were talking earlier about looking at the people that you know and leveraging some of the relationships that you have. But at the same time that you do that, I think it's important to say, what can I do for them? Because relationships do matter. And so how you approach that relationship is everything.
It really is. And as much as I am not a fan of brown nosing and, that's just gross to me, we do have to keep in mind that there is a reality of, you got to also know how to network, and you are the product. You are selling yourself, so to speak, to perform. And so you have to know how to negotiate, talk the talk, do the do, and of course, have respect for yourself. There are certain things that certain people refuse to portray or play, and that's everyone's right. I'm not saying suck up, but to people, but it is important to have a realistic idea of how the business works and how to market yourself, and knowing that it's important to have yourself seen in the best light possible. Yeah. So
it's harder for introverts than extroverts. Would you say that's true?
I know. Well, I always think of myself as an extroverted introvert, because I do what I have to do. I network and socialize at the opening night parties and this and that. And then I find a way to just have a creep out the room and into my PJs and not such a homebody. Yeah, I'm not. It's funny. When the spotlight's on you and you're on stage and you're performing rehearsed dialogue, it's one thing, but when you're put on the spot in a networking situation where it could influence employment for you or notoriety or just your reputation, all of that, it's exhausting. We're always thought to be, or we should always be on as actors. For women, especially, be made up and the perfection, the look that you portray, your brand. We always have to be out there showcasing that. And it gets exhausting. And one thing that I will say is very important for vocalists, for actors, for dancers, for all of the above, is mental health. Something that I really feel strongly about is the importance of mental health and just checking in with yourself. When we would do the Scottsboro Boys, that show was so deep and so heavy. And we told each other every night, we got to leave it on the stage. We got to leave it here. We can't be bringing that heavy burden of our people and this story and the history of our country with us home. It's just not healthy. And I think that the mental health is important in that way, and also in just the self-love, knowing that, there's going to be so many no's. I know people have heard that phrase a bajillion times, but it's true. There's so much negative energy in the business as well as positive, but there's a lot of rejection. And it's hard, and I still am very insecure about certain things and certain auditions and how I sound on this recording and this and that and the judgment that I'll receive. And so again, like you said before, it's a balancing act, and it's something that never really goes away, that pressure of being on and being perfect. And so it's you level that out with checking in with yourself at the end of the day, keeping that confidence, that fake it till you make it mentality. If you need whatever you need to do what you love, and do it in a healthy, self-loving way.
Yeah, you're bringing us perfectly into this next section of the interview. Let's move forward in time to more recent history. You're in New York City. COVID-19 hits. Broadway shuts down. You're alone in your apartment. You actually contract COVID. What happens next?
Lord. So I was in the Broadway hit Come From Away, which I will be returning to. I'm so excited for that this fall. So when we shut down, one of our cast members just a couple of days later said, "Hey guys, I just tested positive." And so we all got tested. I had thought that I maybe had it. Luckily, I had a mild to medium case. And I wrote it out at home with my little Wheaton Terrier pup, Teddy.
Aw, scary though. Jeez, because nobody knew that much about it in the beginning.
I know. And also like I was misled and totally understandably by my doctor and some over-the-counter pharmacists that were saying, oh, you don't have it. It's a dry cough and a fever and this and that. And you have a wet cough and no fever. And then we discovered that not all the symptoms are that black and white. And luckily that didn't cause any complications for me. I am asthmatic and that scared me being compromised that way. But luckily I only had a couple nights where I was like, ooh, I should probably go to the hospital. I'm heaving and I don't know if, not to sound dramatic, I knew I would make it through the night, but I thought, you know, at the time they were also saying like, stay away, don't come unless you are absolutely in need of getting to the hospital. So I kind of like bowed out and probably should have gone, but I made it through. So I spent the time at home. I had a choice to sit as like a couch potato or do something productive. And I thought, why not try this music thing that I've always wanted to do and just get writing again.
Will I see the light of day again? I pray it's when not well. Is this Mother Nature waking on mistaken mortals? A universal timeout. I guess in time we'll find out. But till then, please send a friend ease of this midnight ditching.
I wrote in high school and I haven't written really that much since because musical theater life, anyone can tell you, it just takes up all your time to hone the skills and be ready to get the job. So luckily with Rona, I had the time. So it was either work on that or work on my dream to do interior design, which I still want to fulfill. And although I know those are very polar opposites and very random, but I love both. And luckily putting the pen to the page, that kind of decided it for me. And I started writing. And by the time, you know, a month and a half, 2 months later, I had like 15 songs. I said, I need to do something with this. My friends were saying, you know, you need to write, your stuff is good, get your stuff out there. And luckily I feel like I've told the story a million times, but I picked up a ukulele when I was on the Book of Mormon tour in Hawaii years ago. And I had my trusty ukulele. I wrote my songs with that, just simple chord progressions. And I put some videos out early on in the pandemic of these songs that I wrote. So I did that. And a friend reached out to me and was like, hey, this is some pretty great stuff. Let me know if you ever are interested in diving deeper into this. And I said, okay, yeah, whatever. And cut to things really starting to come together and meeting musicians that wanted to play with me and this and that. And I got in touch with this friend and they, goodness, have been a freaking angel and have helped me through monetarily through this whole process. And it's really, I would not be able to do any of this.
Oh, how awesome.
Without their love and generosity. So yeah, I found my producer, found the musicians.
Okay, wait a minute. We've got to go back to this producer thing because I heard another interview about how you were walking your dog in the park and you ended up meeting these people who you started talking with. And anyway, tell us that story because it's really fun.
Oh, of course. I have Teddy, my Wheaton Terrier, to thank. So I live in Hamilton Heights in Harlem and literally right next door to Hamilton's church and the statue. And around the corner is the Hamilton house. And you walk through the park a little bit and there's a dog run. And so that's my spot. That's our spot. So I went there like any other day and ran into this couple who, you know, it's such an artistic neighborhood and the directors and writers and singers and dancers and all that. So I met them. We started talking because of our dogs. And
I love that.
Yeah, one of them was a photographer. They're musicians. I told them about my music. They followed, we, you know, exchanged handles. They followed me on Instagram. I followed them. They saw those early videos and were like, hey, you know, between the two of us, my wife and I, like, we play like 8 instruments each. And if you ever want to flesh this stuff out and make an EP, some demos, do whatever, let us know. And so I kept that in my back pocket. I contacted them when I was ready. They were with child, and unfortunately at the time they were dealing with some complications and couldn't take part in helping me out. They had to go back on their offer and say, you know what, there's just too much going on right now. I'm so sorry, we can't. However, we do have this producer friend, James Frazee, who is incredible and did the wife's record, and why don't you give him a call and see, and just start to check around with producers, because that's how you get the ball rolling. And James and I jived. We immediately clicked. I sent him the demos of my ukulele playing. He saw the potential. We put our heads together. And at that point, I stuck it out for 2 months in New York. People kept saying, oh, it'll be some weeks, it'll be a couple months, we'll be back to work. When it wasn't, I said, you know what, I need to get back to my family. I only see them like basically once, maybe twice a year at the time. So I left. I've been living I'm actually in our game room right now for this interview. And I'm looking at my RV, my huge tour bus RV, old school, I think it was like 1998 or something, Pace Arrowhead RV. And that's where I've been living. That is my apartment. And we're talking like, it's like full on, like full fridge, queen bed, couch, like living area. It feels like Uncle Josh has his space, his apartment, but also is like steps away from the family house. So anyways, I started working remotely with James, and I would pluck out some tunes and tell him arrangement wise what I was thinking, what instruments, what vibe. He would ditty something up and send it back to me. We finally found our musicians, 4 of which are my close friends that are musicians on Come From Away, which was awesome to keep it in the family. And so we gave the musical stems to our bassist and drummer, and they kind of laid the foundation. And then from there, gave it to, strings, guitar, wind instruments, everything that we felt was necessary for each specific song on the album and for the piece as a whole. And we started constructing the album. I recorded about a quarter to a half of it, almost a half, like in my RV, and then cut to me booking the Blacklist. There's so much that happened during the pandemic, and I'm so grateful for it. I got to do one of the first productions back in the fall of last year. It was called We the People. It was a TheaterWorks tour that normally toured around for schools and for kids. And since there was no field trips anymore because of the pandemic, we basically learned this show in like less than 2 weeks.
Wow,
learned it on Zoom,
that's fast.
Performed it. Basically, we just filmed it on the Paper Mill Playhouse stage in New Jersey. No audience, but full sound, cameras, lights, everything. So anyways, that took me to New York. My agent, I wasn't sure about if I booked Blacklist at the time because of COVID. They were having to hire like 3 different backups or choices for roles, because if someone came to set sick, you were out.
Yeah, you had to have a deep well of people to draw from.
God. Yeah, and so I didn't know I was continuing to be a person of interest, like someone that they wanted for the role, but I didn't know which order I was, if I was like third, runner-up, or first. And finally, I found out that I was their pick, and luckily, my agent was like, don't come out because we don't know if it's you or not. And then I got We the People, and that took me out to New York, and while I was there, I heard they had booked it, and so I did that. Did 3 photo shoots with 3 different amazing photographers to get content for online for my album, just cleaned up shop and did everything I could in preps of coming back to California and continuing the process. I also recorded the other half of the album at Hobo Sound Studios in New Jersey with James. So that was, of course, night and day.
That must have felt good too after trying to do it with your gear in your motorhome.
Let me tell you, I souped up that motorhome. I went to bnh.com and I said, I'll take this and this. And, it was a full-on studio. And
that's so cool.
We made some really great music that way, and also, of course, in the actual studio. So it was great. A lot of great work. Went back to New York a couple times during the pandemic to do some TV and theater stuff and some film stuff, actually. So it's been really fruitful, this pandemic. Really great.
That's amazing. And you'd already contracted COVID, so you were good to go when so many people weren't, at a time when it was a lot scarier to get out there and do things. And by the way, James is no slouch. He's a Grammy Award nominee. He's worked with Smith, Esperanza Spalding, Betty LaVette. The list goes on, and the record sounds great. It's world class. You did a great job. And I'd love to dig a little deeper into a few of the songs on the record.
Sure.
The first one is You, Y-O-U. Mm-hmm. And it seems like one of the hardest things in life is learning to love yourself. And you were talking about that earlier. Like, that's part of mental health, right? And that's what the song is about. So I love the line, every little scar becomes a part of you. I'd love to know what inspired you to write that song.
I am a big supporter of therapy. I have a therapist. I talk to them once a week, and dealing with my demons, dealing with my lack of self-worth at times, what really stemmed the song is it was a previous breakup, and I was single during the pandemic, and I was rummaging around and thinking, what is the common denominator? It's me. And, it's a kind of a cliche idea, but it's truth. It's true that you cannot love someone until you learn to love yourself. And I realized I wasn't loving myself. And there are things that I don't like about myself. And, I'm an imperfect soul for sure. And so I had to face my own demons and problems and say, you know what, let me hit this head on and see why I've had these failed relationships in the past. What is the common denominator? So it was a song for myself initially. And then as I wrote, I said, you know what, this could be an anthem for all. Just look inward, learn to love yourself first. And I bet you will start to see people come out of the woodworks, wanting to pursue you. So for me, it was a self-love anthem, and hopefully for others, they'll see it as such, and also a way to open the door to future relationships first by loving oneself.
Ever wonder why it's hard to hold a good thing down? Hear the thunder fall before the lightning hits the ground. Every lover you discover is another notch. Every chance to find romance is a chance you botch. Gotta get it back to you. And I'm praying that you listen well. You can love someone before you learn to love yourself. Take it from the single one who's had a ton of fails. Keep your eyes onto the prize that you and you'll prevail. Put the I in love in you.
It's tricky though. That's why it sounds so trite, because love yourself first. Okay, great. But actually doing it, that's a whole other thing. Good for you for working with a therapist, and how lucky you were to already have one, because getting one during the pandemic was not an easy thing. They were booked up and still are.
Right. And a lot of people needed therapy from this.
No kidding.
Funny thing, real quick, I did some music videos with my 4 singles, and one of the music videos was for you. And in the music video, I play myself and my therapist.
I love that.
And I kid you not, my therapist saw the video, because I talked to him, of course, about the song and what it meant to me in the music video. He saw the video and he was like, Josh, I have the exact sweater that you wore.
Oh, no way.
Shut up. No, you don't. He sent me a picture of it, and I was like, oh my God. And I put it in the app, and I had both of our pictures next to each other. It is the same exact outfit.
That's hilarious. And you'd never seen him in it? Or did he forget that he'd worn it in front of you? It was just
Never. It was a Banana Republic green, vibrant patchwork sweater that I felt screamed therapist. And in fact, it did. Literally.
That's great.
Started west but headed east. Thought it best to wet my feet. Starry dreams I'd yet to reach. Home is where the art is. Came from palms and waves and sand. Came to subways, street meet stands. Change of pace and facing plans. Home is where the art is. Solo is the mode I'm in. Longing for the road I've driven round and round before. Was I wrong for wanting more? One foot's planted firmly on an island. I have learned to be my home, away from home, away from all that I have known. Inching towards the world I knew, the other half that home is where the art is.
Home is where the art is. I love the title to that song because there are so many layers of meaning in it. You've got the play on words from home is where the heart is. And because when you're a performer, your heart is in your art, of course. And if you're traveling, your home is all over the place. So you better love what you're doing. It's 3-layer chess here is what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Anyway, because the art is where you're going to find your home, it's also not easy to create life around your art because you end up sacrificing a lot when you leave family, friends, and the life you knew to build life with art at the center of it. So the song and the video seem to highlight for me anyway, the push-pull between the love of family and the love of making art. It sounds like the pandemic gave you an opportunity to finally combine the two. What I want to know is, where do you feel the most at home now?
It's a hard question. The song ends with a question. It's not conclusive at all. You know, I challenge people when they listen to the song to just use it as a meditation. You know, it's not supposed to answer the question, but it leaves us with the question: is home where the art is? I left home, and like so many others, for the art all the way across the country. And I find that, my parents get older. My brother has kids. They're growing up. I'm missing graduations and retirements and all this stuff. And is it worth it? Is it the fork in the road? Did I make the right choice? There's guilt that comes with that. There's a myriad of questions. So I would say that ultimately I'm still torn. I have one foot here and one foot on the other coast, and each place is home for different reasons.
And you're continuing to hold that question in your hand, so to speak.
Correct. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
So Not Forgiving You, this song seems like it would have been a tough one to write because it was about an abusive relationship and boundaries, and it could have been so dark, yet it's not. And I'm just curious as to why. Some
of the greatest songs out there are Debbie Downers, but on the surface they're upbeat and fun, and it makes people think. I think that unconsciously I was also influenced by my experience, taking it back right now to the Scottsboro Boys, of that juxtaposition of jokes that were like horrific, but they made people laugh, and then the audience members would stop and be like, what am I actually laughing at? Again, going back to what Tommy Thompson said, it's not enough to just tell the story. You got to make it entertaining. So to make this upbeat, doo-woppy vibe for subject matter such as, domestic abuse was definitely a choice. But I also find that the style of the song notates my choice of how I deal with the situation. Might not be healthy, but the person that laid these hands back in the day, they still are in touch with me today. They still are trying everything they can to get back in touch and to find forgiveness.
Not forgiving you no matter what you do. I say, shoot, shoot, ba-doo. You say, ba-doo. Get up, ba-doo. Not forgiving you no matter what you do. Shoot, fly, don't bother me. You must agree you treated me unkind. At least I cannot, I will not, I shall not give you the thing that you desire. I'm not forgiving you no matter what you do. I say, shoot, shoot, ba-doo. You say, boo-ba-doo. Get up, boo-boo-doo. I'm not forgiving you no matter what you do. I say, shoot, shoot, ba-doo. You say, boo-ba-doo. Get up. I'm not forgiving you no matter what you do. I'm not forgiving you no matter what you do.
For me, I have to laugh and say, you know what? Shoe fly, don't bother me. I can't. Well, that's my way of dealing with it, because at this point I just have to laugh. And also that they're clueless that the song is not about them, or they think it's not about them. And it's like, what?
Wow.
So I'm just
Wow.
blown away. And so I wanted it to be fun and catchy and also uplifting and serve as an anthem for people that have been in this situation. There's so many folks that have suffered from domestic abuse scenarios and situations. And I urge everybody out there listening, if you have, when you listen to the song and it does resonate with you, there's so many resources out there, numbers to call, people to confide in, to know that you're not alone.
How were you able to leave that relationship? If you don't mind me asking. I mean,
Well, I was actually on tour with my roommate and best friend at the time. And I had to employ my roommate to get my lover off of me. I couldn't get them off. And it was terrifying. And also, like, we were in this Airbnb, we were on tour, and I was basically defending myself and not throwing back the punches, just receiving, because I honestly my mind was, we are not going to tear up this freaking house and have me be left with the bill. Plus, because we're obviously done after tonight, I got to give you money to ship you back home because you don't have a dime to your name. And it was a dark moment in time and not a pleasant moment, but I was able to say no more. I clearly know what I'm willing to put up with and what I'm not, and what I'm worth.
There was a line that was obviously crossed there.
Yeah. And so that was, at that point, that was as simple as could be. I knew what the choice was. I had known for a while, and then to have this blow up moment happen, I'm just, I'm still ashamed to this day that I didn't do anything sooner, that I had to come to that type of situation. But it was what it was. I'm stronger for it now. I'm proud of myself in a way for making art out of it and finding a way to tell that story. The whole process of music, everyone says, write what you know. And so when I sat down and said, let me jot down what I know in this pandemic, I think that's why within a couple months, month and a half, I had 15 songs. I had a lot to say. I had a lot on my mind, whether it was previous incidents or moments in life, or joyful new pandemic current moments, or looking towards the future. If you listen to the record, there's a through line there, and they're all pieces of me that are true to me, my truth.
Well, it must have been a really amazing experience after using your voice to inhabit all these other characters to write and sing your own stories.
Yes. I love telling stories and other people's stories. And like I said, with the historical pieces I've done, like telling real stories of people who have lived is such an honor, and there's such a responsibility to it. But there's nothing like telling your own story, and it's very vulnerable. It's putting your heart out on the line. It's putting your skill set out on the line to be judged and looked at and listened to. And it's nerve-wracking. And I'm discovering that through the process, that it's scary. And, it's hard not to look at these Spotify for artists and all these like resources and see like, who's listening to my stuff today? How many views? How many streams? It's disheartening at times. It's exciting at times. It's a roller coaster ride of emotions, this whole process. But I'm very grateful to be able to tell my own stories and my own truth, and finally bring a talent of mine that I trusted and knew at my core that I had, and have it come to light, and have the confirmation and validation from folks that I do have some gifts in this area, and I'm learning.
That's always been the huge piece for me, making a record. It's like you get another degree, really. Like somebody should come to your door and knock on it and say, here you go. You get another degree, and this is your master's now in music, because there are so many aspects and so much learning that goes on. It's hard to let go of what happens afterward. But I never regret making a recording, especially if it's one that's really calling me to make it.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like how some songs, we all write songs differently. Some start as poems, some start as melodies. But it's interesting how some songs just write themselves. And I've heard that term used before. I've never really understood it until the process of writing this record. Like I would be on the subway, and some of the songs stemmed from just simple ideas or interactions or memories that came to my head, to my mind. And literally just within a couple hours, some like 1 hour, some, of course you go back and you fine tune lyrics, but some just fell out of me on the page. And
what a feeling, right?
What a feeling. Yeah.
It's like somebody else is writing it almost.
Yeah. Those are the ones that also seem to resonate most with people. So it's got to think that there's a higher power that's writing through you as well.
So writing the record's a piece. Recording the record, you got somebody great to produce it and these wonderful people to play it.
Mhm.
And then it's time to release the record. And that is also a whole other huge piece that I think people forget about. I do sometimes, it's like
Yeah.
you've got this recording budget and then whoops, you need at least that much money when it's time to birth it out into the world. So there's distribution, marketing, videos to create, promotion. How did you plan for the release? And did you already know people who could help you? How did all the pieces come together?
I was incredibly overwhelmed with the whole that whole process. I am not I am now, but I was never skilled at the social media and self-marketing and branding and all that stuff. Luckily, a cousin of mine, her husband is a musician as well, and he turned me on to Clubhouse, which is very popular now, and I was able to get on the app, jump into some conversation rooms, and I started to look up people in the room that were in conversations that we had a common ground with. And I found a gentleman named Maximilian AM is what he goes by. That's his name. And I saw that he was a marketing strategist.
For musicians or?
No, in general, for athletes, musicians, what have you. And I looked him up. I looked up a few other people, but I contacted him. We started talking, and long story short, ended up having an incredible work relationship. Actually, tomorrow night, I am celebrating with him because we had our official last session this previous Thursday, and we're going to toast and celebrate the amazing music campaign that we created together. And, he did like a recap on his story, and it was like, made me want to tear up. We started working like in January, and cut till 7 months later. We went from organizing the music that James and I completed and deciding what my brand was, what to deem my sound. We decided retro pop soul, clearly defined what my specific sound was, what my audience was, how to gear towards them, the photography that I needed, the content that we created, the website that we created, the music videos that we arranged and navigated.
And that are so well done. I don't even know how you did all of that.
I loved doing it, and it was awesome. I'm also a kid that grew up with like making of the video, like the MTV show. And I always got so excited seeing those behind the scenes footage shots
that's some of my favorite. I just love the making of stuff. Give me more.
Oh, yeah, of course. I do remember Drive Me Crazy, the Britney Spears song. So I definitely was of the Britney Spears era. When she first came out, I remember that was one of my first CDs that I got, actually. But I watched that video and was that making of the video and was like, oh my God, look what it takes. The dancing, the emoting, the lip syncing, all of the things that you're required to have to pull it off. And I was up for the challenge. And I think I found some amazing directors and choreographers and dancers and actors and people to work with. And I'm very excited about my product that is out there that Max helped me create and target and get out there. We created my YouTube page, Jay Breckenridge, all the social media, the TikTok, the Instagram, the Facebook, the Twitter. I was not on Twitter before this whole music venture started, and now I am. And just a lot of firsts. We developed a production company. My record label got my stuff out there for sync catalogs so that my music can be featured in film and TV and commercials and video games.
You covered everything, it sounds like. And he sounds like he really knew what he was doing. What gave you the feeling that he knew what he was doing enough for you to spend the kind of money that you must have spent with him?
Well, you know what? He just turned 28. He's a youngin'.
Oh my God.
My thinking was, you know what? I need some young blood who knows what is going on right now and who has all the means and knowledge to get me out there and get my sound current. You were saying it's interesting to hear melodies and this and that in music, and my music as pop for as it is, there's some theatrical
you can hear the musical theater in it for sure.
Yeah, and so it's not necessarily the sound of right now, even though that's relative. But I thought that I was in great hands with someone who not only was professional and proficient and had a great track record, but that was, young and knew what was quote unquote hip.
Yeah, because it changes so rapidly now.
It does.
My takeaway in life is that there are two types of goals, intrinsic and extrinsic, inner and outer. Extrinsic goals, like selling 1 million records, can energize and motivate a person, but it's sort of an either or proposition. I mean, you either sell 1 million records or you don't. And then what do you do?
Right.
But they're important to have too, because they do motivate you, but there are so many variables in extrinsic goals that aren't in our control. The sound of the moment, the way that it lands with the audience that's out there and what they're looking for. But intrinsic goals are different. They're about how we want to grow into the person we want to be in the life we want to lead. So I read a quote recently: dream of the person you want to be, not of how rich or powerful or famous that future self is, but about the life you will lead and work you will do to serve and enrich others maximally, leaving behind a world that is better than you found it. That's by Arthur C. Brooks. And I'm just curious about your goals, both extrinsic and intrinsic goals. What's essential for you to achieve now in your life?
Sure. On the surface, I would love to be successfully able to jump back and forth through the medians of my actor self, be able to do film, be able to do TV, be able to jump back to music and Broadway. And, you know, I have some friends that have figured that out and are no more auditions. They're called upon. They're in a great spot. And so I would love to get to that spot where I'm comfortable, and I don't need to be famous, but I would love to be doing what I love and being able to make a living off of it and out of it. As far as, like, you know, deep down what I would love and see for myself goal wise, I would love to just leave a legacy and leave a varied career here on this earth. I can't sit still. I'm a type A personality to a T, and I
kind of got that. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it's I got to keep learning. I got to keep doing. I got to keep making and creating. And
so that's your perfect day. You get to get up and do what you love to do and create the things that you see to create next.
Absolutely. And to continue the cycle, just to stay fulfilled. I don't think I can ever be complacent.
I've also read that you strive to be an advocate for those struggling with self-confidence and self-worth. Is that also one of the drivers in your life now?
It is an aspiration of mine to be that voice, because it's what I know, you know. I've grown up being very insecure for a lot of different reasons. And I know there are people out there that have been in the same situation that I have and that are on the cusp of diving into those situations. And I'm grateful for the people who've guided me along the way in my youth when I've dealt with every type of problem with myself. And I hope that I can be that beacon of light and that guide for someone else. There's just too many people that fall by the wayside because of lack of self-confidence, lack of self-love, lack of self-worth.
So to hear that there are others out there that are wrestling with this and seeing them go ahead in life and do things that they want to do in spite of it and then overcome it sometimes even is really important.
It is. It's rewarding, and we affect more people than we know.
Yeah.
So trusting that our work is good and beautiful and worthy and that we're affecting more people than we might know is a good place to be as well. Good mindset.
Okay, last question. If you could go back and mentor a younger version of yourself, what age would you be and what would you talk to him about?
Oh, man. It would, there's so many different chapters.
I know.
I think I would maybe like my 5-year-old self, you know, that's that tender age, that age where we are discovering ourselves and we're a scolding of a parent or an elder or something can seem exacerbated and hurtful and this and that. And I think I would tell him, it's okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. Don't be so hard on yourself, I think is the main thing. You're going to want to beat yourself up about certain things growing up, and you got it. You got everything you need right there inside you. You are lovable. You are enough. Don't be hard on yourself. Love yourself.
Nice. So what's happening next and where can people find you?
The final record just came out. It's available on my website. People can find it and me and everything about me on my website at j-breckenridge.com. YouTube, social media, all the links to my IMDb, everything is on that website. So I think that's the most concise, easy to find space. I'm j.breckenridge.music on Instagram, j.breckenridge music on Facebook, J. Breckenridge on Twitter. So I'm all around. But yeah, I think that website is like the easiest way to just...
Awesome. And I'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes too, so people can for sure find it wherever they're listening to podcasts.
Yeah, perfect.
Jay, Josh.
Yeah. Hey, Diddy, whatever.
It's been so good to talk to you today. Thank you again for being on the podcast.
My goodness. Thank you for having me, Valerie. It's been a pleasure. And keep singing, keep making the music.
Thank you. You too. I can really wait to hear and see what you do next.
Oh, my goodness. I'm excited. Thanks again.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Living a Vocal Life. You'll find complete show notes for the episode, videos of my guest, and more offerings for singers at ValerieDaySings.com. I'd also love to hear from you, so please let me know what you found useful in this conversation and what you'd like to hear more of in episodes to come. You can leave comments right there on my website or on Facebook or Instagram at Valerie Day Sings or Twitter at Valerie Day. If you like what you've heard, consider sharing with a friend. You can also subscribe on iTunes or wherever you go for podcasts. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave a review. The more reviews, the easier it will be for other singers to find the podcast. Until next time, be well, keep singing, and thanks for listening.